February 1st, 1907, page 182. I am human. Despite my desire to be purely scientific, I have sympathies, revulsions, fears, but I want to be more than human, better than human. I want to be above and see all and to understand the reason for everything. I want to be pure science, pure brain without so much feeling. Feelings cloud me. And yet I come back to the sad truth. I am human. I cannot help but feel for a woman we've imprisoned, a woman who carries the disease and makes people ill. Tests have revealed that Mary Mallon carries the typhoid fever bacteria inside of her. It splits me like lightning, this infinite news. There can be no doubt about her now, but the way we approach her haunts me. It bothers me to the very center of myself. Is it right for the department to treat a human being like a contagious disease? I am not the only one whose feelings about this are knotted. Despite Mr. Soper's personal explanation of how he saved the Brownings from this epidemic, they are outraged at our department for entering and searching their home with no legal warrant, for handling their personal belongings, for frightening their servants, and for dirtying their floors, and for removing Mary so abruptly and imprisoning her with no apparent reason. Mary is not sick, they insist, and could not possibly be responsible for the department's claims. They demand an apology from the mayor himself and every single policeman who controls the city office. Republican and Tammany, they want the immediate release of Mary Mallon, as they say she's being held illegally. Even Mr. Biggs has tried to respond to their fury with fact, but the family has righteousness on their side, and they won't have the department bullying them. Dr. Parks gives us results over the telephone daily. Positive. 8 days, including the weekend. And all of Mary's tests, the blood, the feces, every single one comes out positive for typhoid. And every day after he receives the call, Mr. Soper replaces the handset on its hooks and stares at it. He folds his fingers and he looks at them. I can almost feel his helplessness. I sense he is evaluating difficult questions. What do we do with her now? How do we treat her? Where should we keep her? How do we explain this to people outside the department? We went to the hospital for further interview with her. I was ashamed to visit her, yet I felt compelled, as if I might be able to see something in her I didn't see before. Dr. Parks led us to the ward where he had put her with the consumptive population, where he says she is least likely to be affected by the others who are quarantined than they her. The sound of all these women with all that special tubercular cough, wet lungs ripping, and the spit of blood after echoed through the hall. Mary lay on her metal bed, a woman to either side of her, the pall of misery shadowing her face so gray. I could scarcely look at her. The bandages had been removed from her hands, and she picked at the scabs constantly. I wanted to reach out and still her nervous fingers, to say something kind to her. She had lost weight, and didn't raise her head to look at us. Mr. Soper tapped the hat in his hand and sighed, glancing at me with troubled eyes. I shook my head at him. Neither of us had wanted things to go this way. He sat on the chair beside Mary's bed, and he spoke to her in a quiet voice. Miss Mallon, we've come here to speak to you today because we want to explain your significance in the passage of this pervasive bacteria. Pervasive is one of your vocabulary words, so go back and see what you thought it was, see what it is in context, and then look it up if you're not sure. You are the first person we have encountered whom we have definitely confirmed to be a healthy carrier of the typhoid germ. It's important we trace the genesis of your disease. She stopped picking her hands and smoothed her skirt against her leg. I've got no disease, she said. Mr. Soper squeezed his eyes shut for a moment. He opened them and said, I'm afraid the facts are clear in this case. We have determined with daily testing that you are indeed carrying the typhoid germ. Do you remember ever contracting the fever, Miss Mallon? Never been sick a day in my life. As a child, maybe? Mary stretched on the bed and hugged her pillow to her face. Even a mild case, perhaps back in your native land? She did not answer. Miss Mallon, the more we know, the better we can help you and perhaps remove the disease from you, Mr. Soper said. It was clear that she refused to believe the typhoid was living inside of her. After a few more questions, Mr. Soper sighed. I packed up my notes and I went to see Dr. Parks. In his office, Dr. Parks told us that he was giving her Professor Herman's systematic relief. A tincture of belladonna and chloride, 13 drops in hot water 6 times a day, was supposed to kill the germ. But he didn't know when it would start working. It's like many of these contagious diseases, Dr. Parks said. He teetered with his hand on the edge, his hand edge to edge in the air. All we can do is wait. Mr. Soper nodded, his eyes cast down. However, we have discovered one thing about Mary, the doctor said. My chief looked up. I licked my pencil to write. The nurses learned that when she came here from Ireland, when she was 14, both of her parents had died. She crossed the Atlantic alone. How did her parents die? Mr. Soper said. The doctor shook his head. That's it. That's all she would say. Mr. Soper rubbed his fingers together, thinking. It would help us so much if she would talk about her past, he said. We can't force her to talk, Dr. Parks said. Mr. Soper said, No, I don't suppose we can. We bid the doctor good day as we followed Mr. Soper out of the hospital, and I imagined Mary Mallon at 14 losing both of her parents and the terrible sadness she must have felt. Still, somehow, she managed to travel by herself to America, probably on one of those giant steamers, the company's packed with as many people as will fit. A girl alone, with all those strangers pressed against her. The thought makes me cold. She must surely have gotten seasick in the middle of the ocean. Who comforted her? Did she make any friends? When she landed here, how did she find a job and a place to sleep? Maybe she started as a scullery maid in the kitchen and observed the cook. Learning as she went, I pictured her. A red-haired girl, hardened by her difficult circumstances, fighting for every scrap of food, nothing coming easily. I understood Mary suddenly, knowing that small bit of her past. I understood her bitterness and her tenaciousness and her anger. Over supper I spoke with Marm about the whole case, and she blew on her soup, thinking. So much has changed in our lives since I started this job, and I think she wanted to be careful about advising me. After a while, she said, It's going to be hard for you to believe what you're doing is right, Prudence, because you're a pioneer and you don't know what lies ahead. It seems like no one knows, I said. No one understands why a healthy woman carries the typhoid inside of her, and no one knows how to help her. That's why they're keeping her in quarantine, so they can study her, Marm said. And I thought long and hard about Marm's answer. I'm not sure I have the strength to study Mary like a pinned insect long enough to solve her case. Even remembering the girls who died from Mary's cooking doesn't help me see her on a ward full of consumptives, dying women who cough out contagion with every breath, yet Mary is bursting with health. Couldn't she catch their disease? What can we do to protect her? She can't go back into the world. She can't stay where she is. Is this the place of purgatory that disturbs me? It is this place of purgatory that disturbs me. Now, purgatory is another one of those vocabulary words that you had to guess what it meant. And so what you're going to do is see what it means here, guess, and look it up. That was kind of a really interesting word. I long to push myself above human feeling and into science, yet I can't see with a cold eye. I don't know if I am fit for this life of the mind as I once thought that I was.